Oil prices took a hit this week as the world's top producers failed to agree a deal to freeze supply. Disagreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran particularly is preventing action to stem an overproduction of oil. This is just one of many uncertainties affecting the market. Well, with us to discuss this is today's Live on Live guest, Francis Perrin, chairman of Stratégies, Politiques Energétiques, or SPE, which publishes several newsletters on the energy sector. You're very welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Now, an international oil summit is taking place tomorrow here in Paris. It brings together people from all over the industry who exchange ideas and who discuss the challenges facing the sector. And one major challenge is oil prices. Just how volatile is the market right now?
After the failure of the Doha meeting in Qatar, prices fell. It was, of course, not unexpected. At the same time, we have to take into account that the market is rebalancing itself. It's not something spectacular. It's not dramatic, but it is happening. Why? You have low oil prices. Low oil prices have impacts on world oil demand and world oil supply. Low oil prices tend to increase world oil demand because oil is less expensive. So for consumers, it's an incentive to consume more oil. And on the other hand, low oil prices is something which tends to allow some part of world oil production with high oil production costs. So at the beginning of the day, it was in 2014, you had and you have today a surplus of oil on the market. And it's why oil prices fell dramatically. You have an oil surplus, a little more demand, a little less supply, and you no longer have any oil surplus. And these two movements are happening now, and probably at the end of this year or the beginning of 2017, probably the world oil market will be in balance again between supply and demand, and prices will go up. They will not go up because of the producers. They failed miserably at Doha, but because of the impacts of low oil prices.
Okay, now analysts had predicted, though, that prices were really going to nosedive. And surprisingly, this week, they actually, as you said, rebalanced. Why was it less bad than what we originally thought?
Just after the Doha meeting on Monday morning, on the markets in Asia and in Europe, prices fell. It was the immediate reaction to the failure of the Doha meeting in Qatar. But at the same time, we had in Kuwait a strike of oil workers. And this strike had the effect of reducing Kuwaiti oil production. So it offset part of the bad impact of the Doha meeting. And the fall in oil prices was effectively much less important than expected on Sunday evening after the failure of about 18 producers to reach an agreement in order to freeze their production this year.
Now let's talk a little bit about why the Doha meeting failed. This rift between Saudi Arabia and Iran,
yes,
which is ongoing. How does that stand to affect the market going forward?
It's the key issue. A few days before the Doha meeting, Saudi Arabia was okay with this agreement about a freeze of production between now and, let's say, October this year. And Iran was not part of this game because Iran said some time ago, we are not part of the Doha meeting because the goal of this meeting is to freeze oil production And we, Iran, do not intend at all to freeze our production. The rationale of Iran is fairly clear. Their oil production and oil exports fell since 2012 due to the embargo imposed by the European Union during this year, 2012, on Iranian crude oil. And Iranian officials say now, we have got a partial lifting of the sanctions in January this year. We now have the ability to increase our production and exports. We are not ready now to freeze it, as we are just on the point of increasing it. Everyone on the oil market knows perfectly this Iranian position, including Saudi Arabia. And until a few days ago, Saudi Arabia was okay. But at the latest minute, their delegation in Doha received very strict orders and instructions saying, if Iran is not part of the game, we will not play this game. It was total turn of the Saudi position, which surprised their partners, the other producers, and the oil markets. And it's something very significant because it underlines the fact that Saudi Arabia oil policy, which was for a long time very professional, is now becoming much more politicized. And this is a factor of uncertainty from now on, further factor of uncertainty on the world oil markets.
So with the re-entry to the market of Iran and the improving political situation in places like Libya, another oil producer, can we expect to see this oversupply continue?
It's a difficult question. I would distinguish between Iran and Libya. Iran is definitely in a position to increase its oil production and exports. The Iranian oil minister, Mr. Bijan Namdar Zanganeh, said that the country wants to increase its oil production this year by 1 million barrels per day and its oil exports by 1 million barrels per day. It's perfectly feasible, but probably the timetable is a little short. I think that this 1 million barrels per day increase for both production and exports will happen over this year and part of next year. So there will be a surge, definitely, of Iranian oil production. It will not be as fast as said by the Iranian authorities. Libya, of course, we have an agreement on the government of national union. But will this government be able to establish its authority on the country with two governments, one in Tripoli, one in Tobruk, Beida? It will be very, very difficult. So I am not sure, unfortunately for the Libyan population, that this country will be in a position to increase its oil production and exports in the near future. But Iran definitely will increase its production. At the same time, world oil demand is increasing due to developing and emerging countries, so it's very important. And at the same time, non-OPEC oil supply will probably be reduced this year for the first year since 2008, due to the impact of low oil prices on US oil production, on North Sea oil production, etc. So if you take all these elements and mix them together, I think that there is some room for maneuver for producers and some good anticipations of higher oil prices in the second half of this year and next year. Will not go up to $100 per barrel, clearly, not now, of course, not in the short term, but there is some place for hope on the part of producers.
Now, OPEC has long used the strategy of controlling the production of oil, the level of production, yes, to control the level of prices. Yes. Now, what does this week's failure to reach an agreement say about the credibility of this organisation?
It's a heavy blow to Opec's credibility on the markets and to OPEC and non-OPEC countries' credibility. You are right, in the past, the strategy of OPEC was very simple. When you think that oil prices are too low, you reduce your production in order to reduce world oil supply and to push up prices. If you think that oil prices are too high, it's not the case at the moment, of course, you increase your production in order to push them down. This strategy was not always 100% successful in the past, but it was fairly successful. But you have 13 countries within OPEC, including Saudi Arabia and Iran. How will these two countries be able to reach an agreement at their next ministerial meeting on the 2nd of June?
You're listening to Radio France International in English.